Hey guys, it's Faye from SolarFlow, and I am back with an all-new video. Today's topic is a deep dive behind the veil energy read and behind the veil conversation with Jesus. So if that sounds good to you, please stick around, and if not, I will catch you at another video. Now, for anybody that is new here, that might be watching this and might be thinking, A, that it's not possible, or B, that it's heretical, I'm just gonna start by introducing myself to you. Which is to say, my name is Faye. And I am an energy reader, an intuitive, a medium, and my purpose with all of the videos that I do here on this station is to peel back the 3D veil in exploring what are the soul, spiritual, energetic, or vibrational elements that are comprising the 3D world that we see around us. Because yes, everything that we see in our world has some behind the veil component. And it is no different in this case as well. And as an energy reader and as a medium, I am somebody that can connect to the souls that have crossed over. It does not matter how long ago somebody has crossed over, because on the other side, there's no such thing as time. Time is a three-dimensional construct that we experience here on Earth. But on the other side, 10 minutes, 10 years, 10,000 years, it's all actually the same. So it's not like, unless a soul has really, really well and truly gone and they are nowhere near the Earth plane, that I can't pick up on them. If I request to connect to a soul's energy and they come through, then they're giving me their consent and I can communicate with them. And it's because they're close to the Earth plane at this time. Now, sometimes when I connect to a soul's energy, they give me carte blanche. You can look around, you can look at my energy, you can look at the energy around, my life and the other people that have been in my life. Sometimes the soul will agree to let me connect to them, but it's with a caveat, which is they want to be, if you will, like the tour guide, and they want to show me specific things from their life. And sometimes souls don't give me consent, and they're like, no, I don't want you reading my energy, please go. And I do. And sometimes when I connect to somebody, they want to conversate with me. And that's very much the case of what had happened here with my interaction with Jesus. He wanted to conversate with me. So this is first and foremost where I'm going to share with you, in case you're new here, that as I do with all of my videos, I use a notebook. And the reason that I use a notebook is because when I am connecting to somebody's energy, the words that they share with me are not mine to take liberties with. They are their words, and has come through time and again in the past. The souls that I communicate with very intentionally will use certain words to convey certain messages to me. So in the past, souls have said to me that they felt like once they were out of their body, they felt liberated. That is because they were expressing to me their experience of no longer having a body and just being energy was a liberation to them. It's not mine to take liberty with that. Even more so when I'm conversating with somebody, I'm not going to take liberties with what they say. So you will see me, not just in this video, but if you go back and watch my other videos or future videos, you will see me using a notebook. And it's again a reflection of the respect that I am showing to the soul in trusting that the specific words they choose to communicate with are the ones that they intentionally wanted to communicate with. If for any reason I stray off the written word, I will tell you in advance that this is either 2% personal opinion, because yes, my videos are all 98% channeled and 2% personal opinion. So I will either state in advance this is 2% personal opinion, or I will share that I had found what they had said to be unclear or nebulous, or I had asked for further clarification and that this was what was brought into me. But I do not take liberties with what is ever shared with me. Not when it's energy, not when it's a conversation, never have, never will, and certainly not in this case as well. So anything that came in is exactly what the energy of Jesus wanted to convey with me. Now with that in mind, let's dive in. So as soon as I had connected to Jesus's energy, he had shared with me that he had a lot he wanted to say. But more than say, there was a lot he wanted to share without words. And he wanted to share with me heart to heart, soul to soul, because according to him, as sentient beings with bodies, we get caught up so much in our heads and not enough in our hearts. So the first step, before we even started conversating, was he had requested that I stop, that I take a deep breath. And I just felt the love that he was sending to me. And in fact, for us all watching this video, to stop. Take a deep breath and feel the love that he is sending through to everyone. Right now. But not just now, always. Because he always does. And that was one of the biggest lessons of him coming here to earth when he did as Jesus. Because humanity at that time were beginning to live so out of energetic balance that we all needed a serious dose of love to ground us and remind us that we are all children of God. But as what tends to happen then, and even more so especially now, anytime the energy tries to right itself, those that have had, past tense, those that have had control and wanted to keep us in a lower and disempowered state, shut that shit down. And he had shared with me that he is so glad we have been listening and understanding the way that vibrations and energy work, and that like really does attract like. Therefore, whatever vibration we tune into is the point of our attraction, and from there we call into us and are called energetically that to which we are lined up with. And that he wishes more people would understand and accept how easy it is, because it's truly how we can change our life and our circumstances. So if we don't like where we are, the first step is to change our energetic output, and that changes what we call to ourselves and what we too are then called to as well. So because we have been kept energetically down, all of our energetic outputs have been hijacked. He gave me a modern day example to share, which is it's like a radio, but it's a radio where half of the stations provide nothing but static. But it's been programmed to do this intentionally so, because if we could in fact tune into those stations that are providing static, we would be able to change the dynamic and the very fabric of our being. So those stations have been disabled. And the only output that comes through is static. But this is what he really wants us to know. That only affects us if we believe that the radio metaphor is the only way for us to move forward. Because it isn't. In reality, we need not the radio at all because we have ourselves. And we are the most powerful creators of all. We have just been programmed to believe that we need the radio and we need a point of attraction externally to line up with. But it's only been done to divert our attention away from ourselves and how powerful we truly are. So Jesus came to earth to remind us of this and to remind us of our humanity and love and to teach us by example how powerful we truly are. Think of what Jesus did in the time that he was here as Jesus. That was him living his purpose. But he was causing such an energetic imbalance that he had to be taken out. Now, this is an energetic imbalance away from the way that it had been. Because what did he share when he had first connected to me? Which was humanity was starting to live out of balance. But the way that we were starting to live out of balance was where we were lowering our energetic output and our energetic expression away from the divine. So he had come in to remind us that we are the children of God. And then through that remembrance, that was designed to start to elevate our consciousness and to elevate our energetic expression as well. But because those that were in power at that time were invested, just as they have been in this time, to keep us in a lower energetic state, he was taken out. Because yes, those that we ourselves are in servitude to have been around since then and even before then. They have been around since the creation of man, but has had many different names and many different reinventions. And here's where he had actually brought an example in, but he didn't just bring the example in, he also explained to me how it actually was all divine even back then. Here's how. I'll explain it, I promise. What was the snake in the Garden of Eden that had tempted Eve, if not a point of contrast? Because if not for our earthly desires, what would be the point of even coming here on earth? We could all just have stayed where we were without our bodies. But the point of coming here to earth is to be fully immersed in the 3D and to have bodies. And when we have bodies, those bodies can have desires and can be swayed by 3D temptation. So he is stating from this elevated vantage point that he has, right? Like he's at the top of the mountain looking down at the valley and he can see everything that those in the valley can't they themselves see. So from his elevated vantage point, he's actually sharing that those that we have been living in servitude to, that have been trying to lower our vibration, it's actually all divine anyway, because that is part of the 3D experiences that we come here to have. To have bodies and to be fallible and to have the experiences that we're going to have because of it. So even though it could even be seen that, look, the first man and the first woman, even they made mistakes, even they themselves were not infallible, he is sharing from this elevated vantage point, even that was divine. Because that's the purpose and the meaning in us coming here and having bodies, the experiences that we're going to have with them, and the choices that we're going to make because we have them. So while some may say this makes us trapped, it is not so. It's merely an expression of our choice to have as many experiences here on the earth plane as we wish to have. And if at any point we desire, we can tap out. Thank you. I've had enough. I don't want to come back and have another incarnation. However, we don't know that until we are on the other side. And then, once we have crossed over, we are then without the heavy, dense human emotions. As those fall away with the human 3D body, and then therefore we may choose to stay here and have another go around. Because what happens when all of the heavy, dense 3D emotions, such as fear and hatred and jealousy, what happens when all of those fall away? There's nothing left but love, because that's actually our default state. And then once we ourselves are on the other side and we have that elevated vantage point, may come to a different decision than the one that we would make when we're here, when we're feeling like, holy fucking hell, I don't want to come back and I don't want to do this again. But with that elevated vantage point and understanding that we make the choice to come here and to have the experiences that we're going to have, because Earth is the place where we come to have the experiences we can't have anywhere else. With that elevated vantage point, we may actually decide, you know what? I actually want to come back and I want to have another incarnation. I didn't have the fullness of the experiences in that last go around. I want to come back and I want to have another one. Because we aren't trapped, not truly trapped. And the fact that anyone is alive right now is a reflection of their desire to be here and to be here now. Because otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Because as I've shared in other videos, we are not hapless pinballs that have been dropped into a pinball machine and we're just getting battered around by life. No. We're the cosmic creators of the experiences that we have here on Earth. We've either decided in advance prior to incarnating that we were going to have certain lessons that we were going to experience, or we come here to work out certain soul contracts that we have had from previous incarnations. But we are the designers of the experiences that we have here on the earth plane, truly. And to this, Jesus adhered, it's a rather auspicious time actually to be alive and to see the world change. We are witnessing history with front row seats. So again, this is Jesus reminding us, we all chose to be here now, or we wouldn't be. And that, again, according to Jesus, this is him conversating with me, so much of religion has been rewritten to disempower us, and he wishes he had time to set the record straight. But we, actually on this side, don't have that kind of time. Because even though while we're here, we may live 70, 80, 90 years, and that can feel like a fucking eternity, it's only because the energy here on Earth is so dense and heavy that it's akin to quicksand. But again, on the other side, there's no such thing as time. 10 seconds, 10 minutes, 10 years, 10,000 years, it's all the same. but he has the time to share it because he's eternal. He has all the time in the world, right? We don't, because for him to actually set the record straight on how religion has been rewritten to disempower us would actually take more time than we have in these incarnations. That's saying a lot. That's saying how badly corrupted religion and all of the religious texts have been. That's not 2% personal opinion. That's just me sharing it in that particular way. If you want to learn more about that, I have linked a video that I have done on religion and the Cabal down below. You are welcome to go back and watch that, and that will provide a lot of insight. So we actually don't have that kind of time, because for him to set the record straight on how badly it's been rewritten and corrupted would take more time than we have in these incarnations. However, frankly, it's something we can all come to understand once we ourselves cross over. Or if we do not want to wait until then, we can ask to be shown in meditation. Because yes, we all, not just energy readers, we all actually do have a direct line. We are, in fact, God's children, are we not? And while we, in our three-dimensional human bodies, as teenagers or adults, may not always be in the mood of talking to a parent, we can be rest assured that when we call our parent, they want to talk and connect to us. So when we call God, he too will answer. Or God will answer. Because God's not a he, a she, God's an it. And God desires nothing more than to have a relationship with us. And yes, even on our terms. So all this stuff about the how to have a certain kind of relationship with God, according to Jesus, is nonsense. I'm sorry if you're still clinging to the 3D and those things have meaning and value to you. It's not to disparage you against them. You'll see coming up in a moment why I say that. It's just to say that those are not the only ways that we can actually connect to God. It's not the way that we've been told. You got to go to church or you got to go to synagogue and you got to say these specific words in this specific book. No. That has all been designed to slow down the actual flow of communication between us and God. Everything's a vibration, remember? If we all remembered that we had a direct line to God, our vibration would in fact be a lot higher. So we have been made to forget. So just like Jesus came here to earth as Jesus to help us remember, he shares this now to also help us remember. He came to earth to help us remember we're all children of God and how powerful we truly are, right? Look at the way Jesus lived. Look at what he did. So he's sharing this now to also help us remember we already have God on speed dial, but our ways of connecting to God vary person to person. Yes, for some people it will in fact be prayer. But it's only because when they are in prayer, maybe when they're in their church or in their synagogue or in their mosque, and they are reciting the words, because the words do have an inherent value where they are high vibration words, right? So it's not to say that they have no meaning and they have no value. It's just to say that for some people, connecting to the words and stating the words in a holy space like a church, for that kind of a person, that's going to most raise their vibration so that they can commune directly with God. But that doesn't work for everybody. We don't all learn the same. We don't all see the world the same. We don't all experience the world the same. So yes, for some people, it might in fact be prayer. But for some of us, it might be being in nature. For some of us, it might be meditation. For some of us, it might even be the physical practice of yoga. Because when we are at our highest vibration is when we in fact have a direct line to God. And we don't all get into the highest expression of our vibration the same way. So this is Jesus asking rhetorically, do we understand yet why they've tried so hard to keep us down? And if not, do we need a reminder? Because here's a reminder. War, taxes, bad news media, soul-crushing 9-to-5 jobs, normalizing hookup culture, fake food, fake money, fake news, fake tans, fake teeth, fake friends, no time to pursue our passions, which actually raise our vibration because we have been so busy simply surviving. So yes, if there were someone or a group of someones that were invested and interested in lowering all of our vibrational output, they have found a foolproof way to do it. Again, through war, through taxes, bad news media, soul-crushing 9-to-5 jobs that we take because we just need to fucking survive. And no time, therefore, then to pursue our passions. Because what happens when we pursue our passions? It raises our vibration. So, raise your vibration. Find your bliss and follow it. For there you will find God. And in God, we will remember how powerful we truly are. Now, it was at this point that Jesus had indicated to me he was done sharing, but he was open to answering any questions that I myself may have had. And here's the thing. Just like energy reading is not a precise exercise, right? It's not like I'm going to follow this recipe in a recipe book and then I'm going to recreate what the author of this recipe book has themselves created. It's not like that. Energy reading is fluid and it's as diverse as the energy of the person that I myself am connecting to. So when I sat down to do this and to look into Jesus, I first and foremost didn't know that he was going to want to conversate directly with me. I certainly didn't know that he was going to open up the floor and be like, is there anything you want to ask me? Because if I had, I probably would have been more prepared and I would have had like meaningful questions that I actually wanted to ask. I didn't, so I kind of had to wing it. So the first couple of questions I asked was just like whatever was in my mind banging around, which again, it's not to kind of like knock it and be like, these questions have no inherent value or meaning, because if they were in my mind, then that's a reflection that this is something that was there and presented to me by my guides as an option and as an availability to ask, because there are some people that are going to have this question or find the information and the answer that he had brought into me to be very, very meaningful. So I'm not quite knocking it. I'm just saying I really wasn't prepared. But it's not to say that the questions didn't have inherent value and meaning. Just preparing you in advance. This is the first question that I had asked, which is why I needed to like give the question like a preface. Okay, first question I asked Jesus. No offense. But for any of the so-called haters out there, or people that choose to make a claim that Jesus wasn't real, right? Because there are people that are going to say, no, none of the people that we read about in the Bible are real. They're just like representations, or it's a story, or it's something it's a nice allegory that's been written, but it's really a representation of something else, right? So for any so-called haters or people that choose to make the claim or assert that Jesus was in fact not a real person, I wanted to ask, no offense, was Jesus in fact real? And this is what he had shared with me. Jesus actually, when I ask questions, you'll see this come up more than once, actually tends to answer questions by asking a question. And I find this to be the case as what will happen with a lot of teachers. The teacher doesn't necessarily give you the answer. What the teacher will do is they will follow up your question with another question to actually get you to see if you will tap into your own sense of authority and find an answer that resonates with you yourself, instead of seeking to have information fed to us from an external source. Jesus is very much the same way. He will, as the expression goes, take the horse to water, but whether or not the horse chooses to drink the water is up to the horse, right? But now we're going to say it's not a horse, it's a person, and it's not water, but it's information. So once he asks a question to help guide us to the highest expression of the truth, are we then going to take it? Or do we want to continue to outsource our sense of authority and autonomy to somebody else? So Jesus had given me a follow-up question to my question, which is, if he was not real, then who was I in fact talking with? Certainly not a figment of my imagination. And also, where he had, imagine we were playing mental volleyball. I would have a thought and he would lobby it back to me, right? Or volley it back to me, I think is the way of saying it. So he had then also volleyed back to me this thought that even myself as a Jew, I was taught that he was real. My religion hasn't denied that he is a real person or that he ever was a real person. And that he takes no offense to the question and no offense to so-called non-believers. Because not even those that wish to minimize him, they are in fact also minimizing themselves. Because to wish to deny the existence of Jesus, being God's Son, is to wish to deny that we are all God's children. And those that do in fact seek to minimize this, they need compassion and they need love. Because according to Jesus, imagine how empty they themselves must be to wish to deny that. Why would anyone want to wish to deny that we're all God's children? If they do, those are the people that need compassion and love. Now, I next had asked him, again, random questions banging around in my mind, if in fact December 25th was his birthday, and I know this is probably going to sound like a funny question. Like, why is that even like a point of focus in my mind? I'll explain why. So, as an energy reader, I'm also very, very interested in a lot of esoteric and metaphysical principles, one of them being astrology. And it has been speculated by some in the astrology community that Jesus was not in fact a Capricorn, because if his birthday is in fact December 25th, that would make him a Capricorn. And some people have speculated that that has been corrupted as well, because those who know about astrology could make the claim that I'm going to also back this up. I'll back this up as well. Capricorns can sometimes be aloof. Because here in the Northern Hemisphere, Capricorn is like pretty much like almost the dead of winter. We're not energetically immune to that. Like if you're born in the dead of winter, we can tend to sometimes come across as a little cold and a little bit aloof. So it then stands to reason that would a cold and aloof Capricorn choose to actually die for all of mankind's sins? Like that kind of more energetically would represent a Virgo, because Virgo is the sign that lives in humanity, lives in service to humanity. So it's been speculated by some in the astrological community that perhaps the birthday of Jesus, December 25th, which would mark him as a Capricorn sun, is not a true representation of his birthday and of who he was energetically. Valid question. I think when taking the time to explain it as such, it becomes a valid question. Now, this is also where I'm just going to state, because here's the thing, being somebody that's into astrology and does like astrological and zodiacal readings, it would be a huge misrepresentation to also state that we are nothing more than the sum of our sun sign, right? Like, well, my birthday is this, so therefore I'm a that. That's like one piece of a pie in a whole big motherfucking pie, right? Because the more we learn about astrology, the more that we actually learn. Hold on, are we taking into account the rising sign? Are we taking into account the moon sign? Are we taking into account where all of the planets fall and in what houses, and how energetically that's also going to influence and define a person? So this is just me stating that if not for me stating that, I would be very remiss in sharing with anybody that's maybe newer to astrology. Really, our sun sign is one piece in a pie, but it's not the representation of the entire pie as a whole. But again, this was a thought banging around in my mind. So I did in fact ask Jesus, right? Was December 25th in fact his well and true real birthday? Or is he a Virgo sun, as some have suggested? And this was his very insightful answer to me. He was amused, but stated that the date of his actual birth is inconsequential. So, because if the objective in him coming here to Earth was to remind us of love, there's no need to actually ask for him to answer a question that could cause any division. And anyone exploring this is, again, this is him reminding us that person is being too cerebral about Jesus and his existence. He was here to remind us that we are all God's children and only love is real. So to seek to prove or disprove his birth date is an exercise in futility, because it misses the whole point of there being a Jesus in the first place. So this kind of got me thinking about any subsequential follow-up question that I wanted to ask. And this is where I'm also going to remind you that energy is fluid. It's kind of like the wind. There's no barrier between me, the energy reader, and the subject of whose energy I'm looking into, because there's no three-dimensional barriers, right? It's energy, it's fluid, it's the wind. So when I'm conversating with somebody on an energetic level, it's more akin to like telepathic communication. It's not like I'm sitting there communicating with my mouth and the person has to wait to finish to hear what I'm saying so they can then answer or they can ask a follow-up question. My thoughts are laid bare to them as their thoughts are laid bare to me. So while he was answering this, I was getting activated in thinking about perhaps follow-up questions that I had wanted to ask that I were seeing were, as he had put it, an exercise in futility. They were starting to fall away. Because what were some other questions that I had wanted to ask him? Like, can you share if what has been stated of the way in which you had crossed over, if that was in fact the way it had gone down and who was there? And he was answering to me telepathically because, again, my thoughts were laid bare to him. It's the same thing. If the purpose in asking the question was to prove or disprove something that's going to cause any semblance of discord, he wasn't going to answer it. Because again, what was his purpose and meaning in coming here? To remind us that we're all the children of God, and we are all, the only thing that's real is love. So any question that I was going to ask that was going to be out of alignment with love and us all being the children of God was an exercise in futility, and one that he was not going to answer. Now, this is where, as I had shared at the beginning, if I was going to share anything that was not directly from Jesus, but was 2% personal opinion, I would state it in advance. This is where also my mind had kind of been activated to something I had been shown in the past, which is that any intention, it could be by a religion or it can be by a group of people, but basically any intention that is one that seeks to sow discontent and seeks to cause division among the people and the population is a sect or an organization or a group or maybe even a religious organization that has been completely perversed and taken over. Because if we are all God's children, the last thing God actually wants is A, for us to fight, and B, for us to fight in his name. God's like the ultimate peacemaker. God's like, I love you all. You're all my children. He doesn't want us divided, and he doesn't want us fighting with each other, and he doesn't want us afraid of each other, and he certainly doesn't want us being called to take another person in another religion off of the earth plane in God's name. It's a complete corruption and perversion of the energy that God stands for here on earth. So for me to have even gone down this road, or to even be thinking about, well, who was there and is it true, was something that Jesus was not going to answer. He's not here to sow discontent. He came here to remind us we are all children of God. We are all loved equally, and only love is real. Outside of that, he wasn't going to answer any questions. Again, 2% personal opinion. I'm then therefore going to present to you that anything that is being presented on the world stage that is being done so to cause division, such as, for example, critical race theory, is a perversion, because it is breaking people down to the lowest representation of who we are in the 3D, the color of our skin. And it does not take into account the soul and the character of who we are on the inside, because that's what actually defines a person, nothing else. This is like the window drapings, right? This is like the blinds on your windows. It's like the shirt that we choose to wear. It's not really who we are. It's just how we choose to adorn ourselves in any particular incarnation. That doesn't represent the character of a man or a woman. 2% personal opinion. So this really got me then thinking, what then was a deeply meaningful question that I could ask, right? I have this opportunity to talk to Jesus. Anything that's going to be something where we're seeking to prove or disprove or sow discontent is something that was not going to be answered. Really got me thinking, like, what was a meaningful question that I could then bring forth? And this is then, therefore, the next question that I had asked. I asked Jesus what it was like to grow up knowing that he was the Son of God. And again, he answered my question with a follow-up question, because the very best teachers do it that way. He asked me, what was it like to find my purpose? because him growing up knowing he was the Son of God was absolutely no different. Being the self-aware Son of God only meant that he spent no time on false pursuits because he was singularly focused on his mission. Just as all of us, once we find our purpose, we live it. And we are not then spending our time on false pursuits because we're living our meaning and we're living our purpose in being here. So, his purpose was to remind us nothing more and nothing less. I then asked Jesus what he thinks of the current state of the world. And he answered me, we are all where we are meant to be, both individually and collectively. So take heart. I then asked him what he thinks about Satan. I love this answer. He said he thinks nothing, but only feels compassion for Satan. I then asked what God is like, and he answered pure love. And because there is nothing but pure love, he gave me some very real modern day examples and representations to really make it register and land at home. God then therefore doesn't look at us and think we're a hot mess or that we are unworthy in any way, shape, or form. God doesn't look at us and our bodies and think we should hit the gym more often or think we should maybe stop eating those Doritos. God doesn't do that. And here's the thing. Even though all of this time up until now, we have been saying that God loves us all because we are all his children, this is actually where Jesus had chose to clarify this and had stated, even though we've been saying that up until now, to even compare the love God has for us to the love a parent has for their child is actually an incomplete representation. And here's why. We on this side are so veiled. We have forgotten what it's like to feel nothing but love. And what do we say to somebody that has had really shitty parents, where growing up those children didn't feel that they were loved, or didn't feel that their parents were showing them love, or didn't feel valued and meaningful and appreciated? What do we say to those people? Because their association of a parent's love, and thus therefore God's love for us, is further incomplete. Those people have no reference for it. So hearing God loves us the way a parent loves their child is actually not going to resonate with somebody like that, because they're going to be like, okay, so God doesn't fucking love me. It doesn't resonate because their reference point isn't a positive association of the way a parent loves their child. This is where Jesus had shared God's love for us is beyond words, and it's completely beyond measure. And it's also completely beyond our 3D comprehension. But to in fact be grateful for that, because if we remembered how it felt like to be loved by God, we would gladly fling ourselves off the roof of buildings to end our lives and be united with God once more. We're veiled for a purpose. And thus, too, is part of the human experience, to be veiled so that we can have the experiences we signed up for, fully and completely, and thus to only return home back to God with our report cards and unite with God, who delights in nothing more than to hear how we have enjoyed our human experience. It's akin, again, with the caveat, and Jesus is saying, even though we've been saying up until God loves us the way, God loves us because we're all his children, but our understanding of what it means to be loved by God is incomplete because it's not comparable to the way in which a parent loves their child. But for some people, this example might resonate, which is your kid comes home from school. You want to spend time with them. You want to talk to them. You want to hear, how was their day? Who did they play with? How was their lunch? Did anything notable happen to them? Was there anything they wanted to unpack with us? Is there anything that they wanted to share with us? When we complete our lifetimes and we get to go sit with God again, it's the same thing. He wants to unpack that particular incarnation with us, and he wants to hear, how was that experience, right? But it wasn't a day, it was a complete lifetime. But how was that experience? Who are our friends? Who did we love? How did the lifetime go? Did anything notable happen that we want to share? God wants to hear how we enjoyed that human experience. Because God desires nothing more than connect with us, his children. It was at this point that I had asked Jesus if there was anything he wanted to share with me or with all of us that are watching this video. And he shared two particular things with me. The first one is that though our lives can feel long and sometimes very unrewarding, to try and have fun while we are here. Because it is, after all, our choice to be here. So find our passion and follow it, and to remember, we always have a direct line to God. And the next thing that Jesus had expressed he really wanted to share with me was as follows. It is no coincidence that Jesus was born to, by today's standard, what we would consider to be a single woman or a single mom. It was no coincidence. And yes, part of that was for us to come to understand that he was a child of God, because he was born to a maiden. And to use the terminology that they would use back then, this was a maiden or a virgin and a woman who had not lain with a man. Laid with a man as in slept with them, had sexual relations with them, right? So Jesus was born to a maiden, so that way there could be no question as to Jesus' paternity. Who was his father? This was a girl that had never lain with a man. So this was a divinely conceived child of God. So yes, certainly part of that was so that there was going to be no question as to the paternity of Jesus, right? Like, why was Jesus not born to a married woman? Well, then it would be, okay, the child is the father's. Or why was he not born to a widower, a woman who didn't have a husband? Well, she's already lain with men in the past. Maybe she had lain with another one. And this is not a child of God then, therefore. This is whoever she had last laid with. Certainly that's part of it, that there could be no question as to the paternity of Jesus. But why? Why was there not meant to be a question of the paternity of Jesus? Because Jesus's point in coming here was to remind us we're all the children of God. And also, it was to take the stigma out before this really had a chance to take hold. Which is what? So many women in this modern day and age are either choosing maybe to go to a sperm bank and to have a child on their own. Or maybe the father isn't in the child's life. Or maybe they themselves aren't sure who the father even is. But they are making the choice to raise a child on their own nonetheless. So it's to take the stigma out before it even had a chance to take hold, to prime us, if you will, in this modern day and age where there are so many so-called single women and single moms. So the choice then to come in and to be born to marry a virgin was for all of us then to see two things. It was first the reminder of the fact that we are all the children of God, but it's also to show us the strength of women. It's to remind the single mamas out there that are raising their children on their own of our inherent strength as well. Because whether we are single, alone, divorced, or went to a sperm bank and decided to have a kid on our own, we are more than capable of having and raising a child. And yes, on our own. Because just as Mary herself had Jesus as her child, and she was a single woman, we don't know who the special souls born to us will grow up to be in time. And just as Jesus was not incomplete because he grew up without a mortal father to raise him, any woman that is raising a child on her own, it's a direct message for us to know our children are not incomplete as well. Because just as God is the Father, was the Father of Jesus, it's the same thing for our children. It's the same thing for us. Whether we grew up with a single mother or we grew up with both parents, we are all the children of God. And even if our children grow up without 3D mortal fathers, they are perfectly whole because they too are the children of God. And maybe their meaning and purpose in coming into the circumstances that they came in without a father that's raising them was to remind us that we too are all the children of God. They are not incomplete, just as Jesus was not incomplete. They get to remind us. They are the living embodiment and are reminding us, just like Jesus had reminded us, because he was raised without a mortal father, it's because he was the child of God. They, in this generation, in this day and age, where so many children are maybe born out of wedlock or without fathers, maybe their meaning and purpose as well is to remind us, all of us, this generation of people, that we are the children of God as well. So this concludes the reading that I have for you on Jesus. I hope that you have found this reading to be interesting and insightful, maybe even thought-provoking. And as always, with all of my videos, please take what resonates and leave the rest behind. And as always, and forever and every moment in between, stay in the high vibration.